and
we
then try
haven't
to
had that
help
many.
take
As
care of
far
that,
as,
and then,
you know,
it's crazy.
Well, how
Wanting to
about
know
we get
about
started?
workers' comp or business interruption or anything.
But now, a lot of policies you can get
Lots of
like
late
a
nights.
pandemic
And we have
Mhm.
coverage.
How about we
I
get
don't
started?
know
The
if
sooner
I'm-
we get started, the
Yeah.
sooner we
Yeah, it's,
get out of Dodge. And hopefully, Alex will
That
be
might
able to
be a
join
proper
us
question
when
for
he
you
can.
tonight.
I figured I would probably get that one at some point.
Welcome to session 2. I hope everybody came with lots of questions. Because I'm happy that at least we got 2 experts here. If you don't know each other, this is Bob Cole. He's a CPA here, been here for as long as you can remember.
Long time.
And Jordan Reynolds, he's your insurance guy. And if Alex McLaughlin is our attorney. Alex couldn't be with us in person, as you could see, but he was going to be calling in on video conference calls. So again, tonight is Ask the Expert. And I think it would help Bob and Jordan both is let's go around the room, introduce yourself, and tell them what your plans are for either your startup or for your existing business. Okay? Who wants to go first? Mr. Rose.
David Rose.
Take it over.
We're going to do an ATV, UTV repair shop. Hopefully we're going to get a small go-kart track so we can rent some carts out for the kids or adults if they want to come up. We're going to do a recovery system. If they break down on the trails, we're going to be capable of going out and getting them. We're going to do a guide situation where if you want to, out-of-towners wants to come in and do that guide tour, we got people
Guide
set
tours.
up to do the guide tours on the trails.
I'm Dan Green. We'll be starting up a business to try and get people in the community that can go business to business and help out with IT support, and with a heavy slant towards doing things online and in the cloud.
I'm Latasha Underwood. My business is Hometown Vinyl. It is a vinyl shop located on Riverside Drive. I'm going to be doing vinyl t-shirts, sublimation, and small embroidery, and I'm also going to offer blank t-shirts and vinyl to the home-based hobbyist.
What was your last name, Natasha?
Underwood.
I'm Ryan Kane. I guess you both know what I do.
Know you quite well, right?
I'm actually Tammy Mathis. My husband Mike couldn't be here, but he's going to have a Mike's mobile blasting. It'll be he can go out and blast like any kind of frames, car parts. What else can he do? Like if you've got your sidewalks, anything like that, and it's going to be all mobile. So he can take it from wherever. If you call me and say, hey, come on, I need something cleaned, but he can take it and just on site and do it all.
Sherry Fletcher, I have 460 Market, which is fruit, produce, and greenhouse, and we're wanting to expand the items that we carry. We would like to get into more gardening items and carry mulch and straw and some bags of dirt, things that you can't get here in the county now anymore. So that's what I would like to use the money for, is to expand my business and the products that I carry.
Hi, I'm Liza King, Justin's wife. We actually just went in partnership with Sweet Treats Bakery. She's been having a lot of issues with her son. He's pretty sick. So we're going in partnership to hopefully take over ownership in May. So we're just trying to get it built back up, get new items into the store and delivery and lunch specials and all that jazz.
What was your first name?
Liza.
Liza.
Okay. So who wants to start first on questions?
I need to know it all. I mean, just kind of lay it out there. I've thought all week about what questions could I ask, but I'm really, the main thing, I guess, would be like probably maybe income taxes. You know, my husband works, he's a coal miner, so he does have, you know, he does make a hefty chunk of change. Well, with this, I formed it as a LLC. Do I, do taxes, does this taxes need to be filed on its own, or can I file it with my personal taxes with his, or will that put us through the roof? You know, I'm completely clueless, I guess, when it comes to the, how do you file tax portion?
I'll let Bob take this.
Is it are you the sole owner?
Yes.
All right, basically, without making any other election to treat it like a corporation, you would file it with your personal return on Schedule C, so that whatever your net profit is does get taxed in with your husband's wages, and just treated jointly. You will have self-employment tax on your net earnings. There's a good and bad to that. One, if you were making a whole lot of income, then you'd probably want to do an S corporation, because you can mitigate some of the self-employment tax. But starting out, you could always run it the way you're running it as a sole member and pay self-employment tax until you have growth in income, because you really do need to have some Social Security paid in on yourself.
Absolutely.
So without knowing all the details of the number, I think the way you've set it up is fine.
Next.
So where ours is partnership, how does that go about too? Because right now it's literally 50-50, and then in May she'll be coming off, and we think that she'll be coming off, and then we'll take over full. And then I have a full time at Health Department. My husband has full time at AutoZone. So how is that all gonna? And her husband's also a coal miner as well. So
I hope I got you questions for you. That's a good one.
And we have one employee too.
So the party that owns the store right now is totally independent of you all.
Right.
Unrelated. I mean, this is are you buying her business or are you buying her assets?
Business.
I
guess.
Well, how's her
what's the difference?
Well, if she's got a corporation and she says, I'm just gonna sell you my stock in a corporation, then you're buying her business.
Okay.
Or company.
Okay.
If she says, look, I'm on out, you know, you take what inventory I got and what customers I got, then you're buying the assets. So there's two different things.
Okay, so I guess the assets.
All right, you're buying the assets. So basically, you're going to set up your own entity to do that acquisition. Okay. Now, if she's got the name Sweet Treats Bakery, you need to get an attorney. Alex, is Alex up yet?
I'm trying to get him.
You need to get an attorney to do a name check if you want to pursue your business using that same name, because you could have a problem.
Right, well, we may switch it, but
yeah,
she has no reason. I mean, she said however we need to do it to switch. If we decide to keep the name, she'll do whatever.
Right, and if she's just operating as a sole proprietor under that name, then that name's going to be available to you. It's
Okay,
only when it's incorporated or whatever that's got that name that you run into a problem. But basically, you all would set up your all's entity either as a sole member LLC. If one of you is going to own it, it's generally the simplest way to do it.
Okay.
You could set up as a partnership. You don't see as many partnership nowadays with the LLC being in place, or you could set it up as a corporation. Again, if you set up as a partnership, the drawback of doing like a partnership is that you end up having to file a separate partnership tax return. And that costs extra money to do that.
That's what I was asking.
And it basically flows through and ends up the same way as the sole member LLC.
Okay.
So, you know, again, you all would have to decide what type of entity you want, but basically you're buying her asset.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
You got any insurance questions?
No. This literally happened 2 Fridays ago. Pretty much, she says, "Do you want to buy my company or whatever?" I was like, "Nope, I do not." She called me back. She goes, "Will you please buy it?" And my heart went, "Ouch!" So that's how it come about.
No.
Because her son is very, very sick.
So you're not going in So you're going into this business
Well, right
because
now,
you feel sorry for
no,
it?
no, 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 no. That's what I sound like. No. But that's just the way my heart felt. I was like, oh my gosh. But no, we had actually talked about that for, she started back, when was it, December
December
last year? What was December?
Was
And we thought about going in with her then, but we just kind of, we have 6 kids. So we have a lot on our hands. And then I helped every now and then. I would go in and help, but it just kind of came about where she's like, hey, do you really, I want this to succeed. Will you take it? Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, and you haven't asked me this question, but, you need to make sure, especially going into a startup business, that you have numbers in place, that you've reviewed
We
the
do.
success of her operation, that you've got the team in place, the time. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
We do.
A lot of
We
businesses
have an
fail
attorney
on the
with us
front
too,
end
so.
because they don't get down into the detail. You
Oh,
know
yeah.
what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. We have our attorney as well, so
Okay.
we're all. It's just been, it's kind of. Here you go, kind of thing.
Okay.
Anybody got any insurance questions? I got one actually.
Okay.
Like product insurance. Is it something that is covered? I know that they're really weird about how what's covered under what circumstance. Theft versus if there's a flood, if there's a fire. I mean,
Are you talking about just like your inventory?
right.
There's a couple of different ways to cover that. The way you're set up, you would basically have business personal property or inventory coverage under a business owner's policy or a commercial package policy. And most of those companies that you can get that coverage through will have either very broad coverage or restricted coverage, depending on the company, and most of it goes by years experience, your loss history, if you have claims, things like that. But a business owner's policy is what you would want and need, and under that, where you lease right now, right?
Correct.
You would have coverage for not the building, but it would be everything inside. Your computers, your product, and also if you go in and you build special workbenches, desks, things like that, you can get coverage for that that's attached to the building. It's tenants, betterments, and improvements. And all that is kind of packaged into one policy called a business owner's policy. It's designed for smaller businesses, and it has very broad coverage with, you've got coverage for fire, you've got coverage for theft.
So there is theft coverage on product.
Yes,
Let's say I've got-
it's dependent on the policy and the company. You can get a commercial package policy that excludes theft, but most with standard carriers, yes, it would include theft.
So like if I had $100,000 of cell phones, mobile device, things like that, that would cover in the event somebody threw a rock through the window and stole it.
Mhm.
That would cover
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
Ryan, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you talking about property you own or consigned property?
Consigned, correct.
Consigned property, that's a little different. That would be a Bailey's type coverage, which you could, which there is within a business owner's policy. It varies by company, but there's all different kinds of coverages built in. There is Bailey's coverage or personal property of others that's included in there. The limit differs by the company, and you can always add more coverage if you need it. Most companies on the Bailey's coverage or the personal property of others will be anywhere between 10 and 25,000. It's included in the policy.
But you
And
can
then
add.
you can add up to that 100,000.
I know.
But that's a good question. Yeah, it's a completely different animal if it's, property of others versus your product that you're selling. Like if you were
Right.
producing something and selling it, it'd be completely different because that's in your care, custody, and control. So it's kind of your baby while you
Yeah,
got it.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that's on me, and if something like that did happen, I'm not gonna be able to, okay, I'm sorry, you lost $150,000 worth of product, I can't give you $150,000.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at that. I mean, I want something that can back that up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that coverage would apply to theft, fire, water damage, anything like that, everything with the exception of flood.
And water damage?
We know water
Mhm.
damage one for sure.
Oh my God.
We all do.
Yes.
And I won't take much more time, but weirdly enough, they don't require me to have that type of insurance or on their product. It was really weird how they done that. So, yeah, I'm gonna yell at you and get some kind of quote. Maybe you can come out and look and see what I got
Yeah,
and look
sure.
at what I'm saying,
Sure, yeah.
and then kind of get me some quotes or some different things together on that.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And the only other coverage there, the BOP, and then there might be, you probably got a professional exposure to some degree.
Mhm.
If you're doing a lot of large network work
Right.
and things like that would just fall under a miscellaneous, professional.
That would be on me if I was, for instance, at your business working on your network and something happened and whatever.
Right, and with that, within the business owner's policy, there's general liability coverage, which would provide coverage to damage that you do, property damage or bodily injury, but it wouldn't cover your actual work, if that makes sense. It's
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
to
come
look at
by.
what you got. And,
Because there's several things that we probably should discuss on, other things that go on as well, so. Sorry.
yeah, no, good question.
David, the business that you're starting, I would think that, have you checked into what kind of insurance you're gonna need for that?
I have, but what we're gonna do one building, it's gonna be 40 by 40. Half's gonna be maintenance, and half's gonna be like a parts store. You can come in and get your parts or whatever. Will I have to have insurance on that plus the go-kart track together? Or can it be a seasonal part on the track itself?
The track itself is going to be a kind of a completely different animal, even if it is under the same business name, just because it's a really different exposure than what you're doing in the shop and the parts store. With that, you can easily cover that with a business owner's policy and a garage keeper's policy, garage liability, depending on the extent of the work and the size of the vehicles, and if they're just ATVs or things like that. But you'd want to have some garage keeper's coverage and garage liability that protects you, basically the same thing that Ryan was talking about when you've got other people's property in your possession and you're repairing it. If you go out and test it, make sure you've repaired it correctly and something happens, you want coverage for that. As far as the go-kart track, that's going to be with a excess and surplus lines type carrier or a specialty carrier. You can probably find, if you look in trade magazines and that kind of thing, you might be able to find a broker that would offer a better premium on that. And then, if I were to go out and get it, I would go out to several different brokers. But a lot of the specialty trade magazines, websites, things like that, you might be able to. But the go-kart track's a little bit more liability exposure than the parts. And the property coverage too. You put the property coverage under one policy with the.
Even if we have some storage units, like some riders want to store their machine for the weekend, like out-of-towners, they want to go back like Friday or Sunday and come back Friday.
Yeah. I mean,
It'll still stay in the same.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if they're on your property, in your facility, then yeah, you could, that garage keeper's coverage would provide coverage for their, and there's different kinds of garage keeper's coverage too. There's legal liability and direct primary, which they're different too. You have to be legally liable for your insurance to pay for somebody else's, whereas direct primary, it'll pay regardless, your policy will. So it's just different things you can look at, and it's all different pricing. So whatever fits your need, is anybody could write you a policy for what you need.
Be a good selling point. I mean, if you park your stuff here, you're covered.
Yeah.
Just in the event something
Yeah.
happened, you know what I mean?
That's been called for a lot. Even campers,
Mhm.
people's wanting places to store their campers too.
Mhm.
I'm glad to hear that you can,
You might have to take some, I mean, if you're talking about campers, you might have to do something like have them in a locked area, like in a fenced
Yeah.
area.
yeah.
Maybe required to do something like that, but yeah, you can definitely get coverage for that.
What about if somebody comes on, like, we're all in the same building, if somebody comes in and falls and gets hurt, who would be liable for that?
It would, well, probably everybody involved would get sued.
That's great.
But has Alex told us yet? No.
He's having technical problems. I
Okay.
don't know, I've
But
tried
it
everything
would,
to try to help him.
It would just fall to really if someone was legally liable for someone getting hurt. And it could be, for instance, this building, who is the owner of this building? The owner of this building?
Grundy Town IDA owns it now.
IDA. So the IDA would have a exposure there. So would the chamber would have an exposure there. To some degree, I guess, the county challenge to some degree could have exposure. I can't see where that would come into play in this situation, but and that's one thing that's really important about liability coverage that a lot of people don't know is that they will provide defense for you should you be sued.
Oh, they take care of legal fees.
Yeah, and it's different how it's set up. A lot of them are, the limits are within your limits. Sometimes it's outside the limits. But yeah, they provide, if it's a legitimate claim, then, and you haven't done anything intentional, then.
So, but all of us could have some sort of responsibility for an accident.
Right.
Even though we don't own the building.
Right, and not only
Not know that.
well, I mean, most of that will get thrown out. Like if everybody was named here, it would get thrown out. It would probably come down to the chamber or the town IDA. Those might get thrown out. But you don't have to do anything wrong for somebody to sue you.
That's right.
So, and those defense costs can add up pretty quickly.
And I wish Alex was on board because he could address this, but, it's one of the reasons, or two of the things, when you do your business plan, I know y'all went through this, and critical things is, David, like the questions you're asking, I want to make sure I've got all my insurances right. One of the worst gut-wrenching feelings in the world is to have something happen and then find out you didn't have insurance that covered that, and I've known that to happen. And the second thing is it's all the more reason to set up your business through a legal entity such as an LLC or a corporation, because if handled right, that will shield. A lot of lawsuits could bankrupt a person, you know what I'm saying? But with a legal entity in place, technically, they can't go past the assets of that entity. So, it's really important.
So if Mike pulls his machine to someone's house and is working, because that's what, he can take it to you. So if he's working there, he's gonna have a special insurance,
He would definitely need to have,
some kind of
I
different.
would at least general liability coverage, because anything that he does that, or even somebody would allege, but anything that he does that maybe causes property damage or he injures somebody, then you're going to have coverage for that. And a lot of people, depending on the size of your and type of client that you may have, you may get into it and have, large auto
Yeah,
dealers or repair shops that want you as a vendor, and they'll require you to have coverage before you come on the property and actually do the work.
Tell about some taxes, Bob. That's a lot of fun. Tell you, you get that bad gut wrench feeling when you see Bob pulling your money.
I
I didn't hear him, what'd he say? He talking about me?
It's like Bob's here, the checkbook,
Is there,
Bob, you're not getting the love, you,
Yeah, I am, I'm eating a donut.
It gives you all the bad news. If you make money, you will pay taxes, right? I'm gonna tell you that. If you don't wanna pay, they'll just take it.
is there any benefit to, starting your LLC in the county versus the city?
Not really. The only difference is if you're located within the town limits, you'll pay town property taxes on whatever you've got, plus county. And if you're like a food establishment, you'll have to collect, an extra tax there, which, that's not your expense, you would collect it. But I can't think of any, advantages off the top of my head, other than you want a good visible location, really, wherever that falls is where it falls, is the way I would look at it.
But the city doesn't provide extra benefits on top of the county in return for those taxes paid.
Except for maybe like police force, going by and checking your businesses. I know that the town will
Yeah, last
basically
time
go
they-
just past the town
That's cool.
limit sign and check businesses, and so you would have that benefit probably. But from a monetary standpoint, I can't think, unless there, there are some cities or town that, they may be going through a revitalization program and offer, grants or something to get you in, but short of that, there's nothing in a general sense.
It's true.
Do you have a question?
No, I was gonna say that's true.
Yeah.
The other thing that, I'll add to what he said, the other thing that being in the town is lights. You have the street lights, you have the lights on on the road. Cause once you get past that, you don't have them if you think about it, so. And I know that's an expense of the town, is lighting.
Well,
both of you could address this, but probably you, Jordan. Almost all challenges we get on the topic of, and I think we even did last year, is when I put my decal on the side of my truck that I own personally, everything changes. Do you wanna,
Yeah,
share that?
it's important that if, depending on how you're set up, and like Bob said, setting yourself up as an LLC or a corporation is important to protect your personal assets. But if you're just using a personal vehicle and you're putting a business name on there, basically if you're involved in an accident, a few different things will happen. They'll see your business, they'll automatically think that you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of disposable cash, so they'll get an attorney. Depending on what you're doing with the vehicle, a lot of times if you've got it on a personal auto policy, the personal auto policy is not going to respond because you're using it for business. And that vehicle should be on a commercial auto policy. There's coverages built into a commercial auto policy that are specific for businesses, and they kind of offer more coverages. But you can get into some trouble with just sticking your name on the side of the vehicle, and first you might not have coverage if it's on a personal auto. You may open up issues with your company because it's advertised, you're using it in the course of business. So it's good to have those separate.
Anything on the door too, like some people do magnets, anything on the door, you have to go through the DMV because it has to be something completely different than just, if you say a personal vehicle.
Mhm.
So you have to go through the DMV and have to have specialized tags and for the business and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if I use my personal vehicle without a decal, but I'm making deliveries on behalf of my
Right.
business?
Well, you can set it up on most personal auto policies, you can set it up as business use. There's pleasure use, commute to and from work or school, and there's business use. You can set it up like that, but they look at delivery a little differently than, especially food delivery, than they do, you know, if you were just using your vehicle to see customers, 2 or 3 customers a day, just because there's that added exposure of the time element in there, and that you know, so just always check with your insurance carrier or agent and tell them what you're doing, and they should be able to recommend the appropriate policy. But food delivery, and that's another thing too, under the commercial auto policy and even under a general liability policy that provides some coverage for your employees driving their vehicles in the course of business. It's in excess of the underlying, but there is some coverage.
There was a question I'd asked Jordan, coming in, and it's regarding this whole state of pandemic that we're in right now, that a lot of businesses will have a specific rider or whatever you call it for like a cessation of business. If there's something that causes your business, then they'll pay you X amount based on your revenues.
Mm-hmm.
I had this happen to a guy that had a filling station, and his canopy fell, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
but you know, they will say, well, you know, and when you got to read the policy, it was based on, well, what kind of revenue loss did you actually have? You
Right.
just can't say, you know, you owe me $20,000 or whatever.
Right.
But a lot of people really, in times such as this that we're in, should be looking at their policies to see if they've got anything inside there like that, because a lot of businesses are suffering right now.
Yeah, and most policies exclude, you know, pandemic, war, terrorism, things like that. Some, like Bob said, you can buy coverage back by endorsement, but what's going on right now with the COVID-19 is I think probably you know, just unforeseen, unprecedented,
Yeah.
you know, uncharted waters for businesses, insurance companies. You know, I've seen over the last couple of weeks a lot of emails from insurance commissioners regarding workers' comp coverage, and you know, how they're looking at that, because you know, where do you get infected, and did you get infected in the course of doing your regular job duties, and is that even covered? You know, you're not going to have workers' comp coverage for getting the flu, so why would you have it for anything else? You know, if you're a nurse or something like that, and you get pricked by a needle or exposed that way, it's a little differently, so, or a little different. It's really interesting, other than being scary. But like Bob said, the business interruption coverage, that's part of a policy that you need to make sure that you have in there, because they will, whether you have a partial loss, like Bob was talking about with the gas station awning, or if you've got a complete loss, just say, for instance, you lost your business to a fire, you didn't have anything left. You've got business income and extra expense coverage, which is on a business owner's policy, and it's generally on a commercial package policy. And basically what that does is it replaces your lost revenue while you're down. The extra expense you incur to continue to do business, if you still can, or the lost income because you can't do any business. And the insurance companies, they bring in forensic accountants, and they go through everything for the past however many years they can get their hands on, and they see what your average revenue is per month, or what it is, you know, for the last few years, and that's how you're compensated. Yeah. But it's a real important coverage to have if you're in business. You know, and it will pay, depending on the policy, it'll pay up to 12 months and of your actual loss sustained. So it's pretty important to have that too.
And it comes down to, you know, I mean, you can't let everything you can possibly imagine drive you, because you'd be giving all your money out to premiums and insurance. But you know, you want to make sure that you know, safe at the basic level, for the, you know, for your coverages. It just, a lot of it just amounts to, you know, risk versus, you know, how much you're willing to pay, you know, or safeguard against that risk. But I know that, a lot of these, businesses, hopefully this thing will turn real soon, that, you know, that they're having a tough time.
Bob, 5 of these folks in here, I think it's 5, are doing startup businesses. Do you suggest that they keep their books in a shoebox? Or how do you think they ought to go about setting up their books? Because that's an area that I find is that you can get off at the very beginning on the wrong way.
Yeah.
From someone that's helped folks, you know, that's got their hands smacked and butts whooped so many times, how would you suggest these folks starting at the beginning to get set up and for their business from a bookkeeping standpoint, county?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, there's still a few people that keep, written journals to keep their records and bank statements if there's not a lot of activity. I typically don't recommend that because, number one, you'll pay, you know, a bigger tax bill at the end of the year for somebody to go, or, you know, an accountant fee. Ron can allude to this. I mean, and some of you probably are familiar with QuickBooks. I'd say 95% of my outside clients utilize QuickBooks. It's just has taken over, really. Easy to use, user friendly, and one of the main things, especially for startup, you want to actually see the progress of your business. So to be able to generate financials is important to see, you know, what direction your business is headed. But again, I mean, some people are still, you know, it depends on the business you're doing. I mean, if you're a personal service type business, it's not real big, and you want to keep your books on a written ledger or something, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking at a developing business that you want to grow and, you know, manage, then I would recommend you have an automated system like QuickBooks or one of those programs.
Do a lot of your customers use QuickBooks, the software on their computers, or the online version?
Good question.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Most everything now is cloud-based.
Yeah, but there's still some people that are
Personally, I like the desktop version. Its reporting capabilities are way greater than online. Online has made some progress. I mean, QuickBooks have heard the, you know, the questions and the complaints and have updated. Online is easier from a standpoint if you're connected with an accountant that looks at your books periodically. It's easy. You give them a passcode, and they can see what's going on, year-end taxes, so forth. A little bit easier having it online. But either way would be sufficient. I'm starting to see a few more people go with the online
If your
QuickBooks.
computer crashes, you won't lose your data.
Yeah.
If you don't have a current backup, you would be able to pull down a current account. You know what I mean?
Well, that just happened to my sister last week. The computer crashed. She hadn't backed up in over a year.
Yeah.
And I said, and she was using the desktop version. And so that's why I was saying, you really need to go with the online version. I don't know, is there a big price difference?
Not really. But next year, put Ryan down. You need to have him in here as your computer expert. But that's bad. I mean, if you are operating a business and aren't doing backups and you lose it, that's real bad. I mean,
She's learned the lesson the hard way.
yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn. Price-wise, QuickBooks has went up in price. Now, they used to have you pay a flat fee like for payroll, but now you pay a fee plus like $1.50 a paycheck. So their fees are changing. The base software cost $400 or $500 is probably comparable to each other.
Is that a year or?
That,
Payroll services,
the-
correct.
payroll is you have to renew it every year, and they've got 2 or 3 different,
Okay.
whichever one fits you. You can actually get them as a payroll service, and they do it. It just whatever fits, your model and what you want to do.
But it only lasts 3 years. If you buy QuickBooks 2020
Yeah,
in 2023, you were required to purchase the new QuickBooks or your payroll updates will no longer work.
yep,
Which is something you have to budget for
Every 3
in
years.
your business plan as you keep it updated.
exactly right. And that's something that they only changed, about 2 or 3, couple years ago, they started implementing that. And because I remember years go by and people would ask me, well, when do I need to upgrade my QuickBooks? I said, when it stopped working, I guess. You literally, I had people still using 2012. But now, like Ryan says, QuickBooks got wind of this, and we're not gonna lie. I've got a lady right after tax season I've got to go over, because she's running 17, and she's got payroll, and she says, I need to upgrade.
You gotta
Yep.
have it, man. It's for you.
Yep.
You can still use the software like the ledger and things like that, but if you do payroll and you have to have those updates, it will not work.
Yep, that's true. If you're just doing accounting without the payroll, yeah, you can still be using I know probably one that's using 15, no payroll, that's okay.
Anything else you wanna share, Ryan, on, you're the,
My
like,
100%
inventory, can you keep up with inventory?
invoices, you can do. I mean, QuickBooks runs a business single-handedly. Any small business for sure, it can do everything financial, and it makes it easier for him at the end of the year. Instead of him having to come in and try to get this and that, and what do you do here, what you do there, he comes in, Bob comes in, he sticks his junk drive in, he goes through everything of ours, when he gets what he wants, he puts it on, he leaves. I
Yep.
mean, it's easily done.
Yep.
And sometimes I just log him right into my computer, he does what he wants.
And that's to answer your first question, that there's a difference in having that ease of being able to do things than having to go through somebody that's kept a box and say, there it is. I mean, you look at the time difference, in doing that work. So no matter what kind of system you use, at least have a system, in place.
Which for Mike, I think that would be good, that he could keep up with invoices and so forth, because one of the things that I have seen, especially, nothing to say on the service industry, but that's an area that they fail to do, is do their invoices, like these guys doing landscaping and, scraping snow, those types of things. I know a business that had someone do it, and it's been a year and a half, and they've never submitted an invoice.
Yep.
Same way with the chamber in Washington County, we had a catering a year ago, and the restaurant still has never sent us an invoice. And it's just that little thing, and that's gonna help. Remember, hey, they haven't paid me, or I didn't send that invoice, and you need that, cause you're gonna be so busy, you kinda need those, reminders and stuff like that.
And I'll tell you that, the aging of when you did that bill, and a lot of times, not only that, you'll get phone calls, okay, this don't work, I bought this from you this date. You can refer back and see, because they want warranty on something they bought 2 years ago and tell you they bought 6 months ago or whatever, and you can refer back and see when you did that work, what they got, when they got it. I mean, and it'll let you know, okay, buddy, here's the proof, here it is, you got the invoice that's signed, so forth, whatever, It just protects you all the way down as far as that. And it'll pay for itself, like he said. If you reach Bob a box of papers, Bob's gonna have a lot of hours in that. Bob's hours,
Bob's not gonna be a
he
happy
ain't
guy
gonna live
either,
for free.
is he?
But- But what you're talking about, I see that a lot. You've got John that he's good at landscaping or coal mine or whatever, but he don't want nothing to do. That's where you need to plan up front. If it's a husband, wife, or that type team, then, the whichever one and it's not always the ladies, I know the men sometimes that's their forte. Or whether you have someone working in your office, yeah, it's no good to be out doing the work and not billing for it, you know, so you need to make sure you've got that set up front.
And then, David, I was thinking about your business, if you have the go-kart track or anything like that, are you going to have, folks sign a waiver?
That's a good question. I was wondering, are there a wristband that you could wear, like right at your own wrist, or, wrist, or?
Yeah,
Are they-
I mean, you can get them to sign something or put a band on them or
Yeah.
get them to sign a waiver, but, you know, and Bob could probably talk to this point too. I mean, the waiver, it doesn't do much for you in the end. I've seen it. And, you know, even the insurance company will want a copy of what waiver you're having them sign. Sometimes they'll provide you with the waiver that you can get them to sign, but it does offer some protection, but you're still open to that lawsuit.
That's where Alex probably could go
Yeah.
into detail
Yeah.
with waivers.
Yeah.
Because a good attorney on the other side is gonna find a way to penetrate that waiver.
Yeah.
Well, this kid, he was only 14, he didn't understand what he was signing, you know what I'm saying? And just like that,
It's always good to have him. I mean, waivers. There's nothing wrong with waivers at
No.
all. And a lot of times, people will, if something does happen,
they
you
know they signed
Yeah,
it.
they say,
Yeah.
I signed that waiver. You know.
Yeah, so it deters.
So yeah, I mean, they do protect you, but from a actual legal standpoint, Alex would be better to speak to that. But I know that it definitely not foolproof.
And let's say, Dan, I was thinking about your business, if you're gonna have employees going into people's homes to do work, is there any kind of extra insurance or anything that he would need on that in case they messed up the computer, or when they pulled in, they hit the owner's car, or, I mean.
Yeah, your general liability coverage would pick up there. If you're going into people's homes, I would make sure that you had some kind of employee dishonesty, or which is kind of a Bailey's type coverage. You never know when a homeowner is going to call you up and say, you know, I had my 10-carat diamond earrings sitting out and they're not there any longer. So.
Are there any particular companies or policies that you can use as a deterrent? As like, okay, go ahead and talk to my agent. Oh, by the way, they've won like the last 100 cases.
Not necessarily. I mean, you could say
That's a good
that.
strategy, though.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that and refer them, but you know, if it came to that kind of situation, then the insurance company, their claims department would basically take over from there and you know, see what their story is and that. But yeah, I mean, you could always tell them that.
Like, I would pay more for a more aggressive insurance company just because I don't want to deal with that at all.
Yeah.
And is there any company that's known better for being more defensive for the owners or the policyholders?
Some are more aggressive than others. They all look at the potential size of the claim as to how aggressive they may or may not be. If it's a small claim, I mean, and it's a covered claim, they're generally just going to pay it, just from an expense standpoint, which is unfortunate. But depending on the severity or the amount of the claim, and also the legitimacy of the claimant too. You know, if there's holes in their story or something like that, you know, insurance companies have special investigation units that just do that. They, you know, that's where you see the private eyes go out and see the workers' comp guy that's off on workers' comp and dunking the basketball and that kind of thing. But to answer your question, I mean, you could use one of the more well-known companies, I guess, you know, would be what I would say. But
And do you have to engage a lawyer if you receive a claim, or if you get sued, for example.
What you do in that case is you submit the information or file the claim with your agent or the company. And then from there, the company actually assigns legal counsel for you.
So you don't have to go shopping around.
Right,
for it if you get
exactly,
sued.
exactly. And they do it pretty quickly too.
Because that insurance company is gonna try to deter from actually, you know, getting into it, so they're gonna definitely hire one of the best lawyers on your behalf, you know.
So what if he's out and he has his equipment and he goes outside to get something else and somebody steals something that he's working with? What happens with that? I know it's kind of different than Ryan's because his is actual merchandise, but his actual like equipment.
Like the equipment that he uses.
I'm not sure what he uses,
So,
but
yeah, but that's a good one, would that be considered like, if it was in his vehicle, and
because
they his
the reason
vehicle,
I'm asking
does
is
that
because
fall under vehicle
right, because
insurance,
when,
or does that fall under?
the reason I'm asking is because my husband, he used to do, I guess you call it I guess he's a personal contractor, if you want to call it. Because he did Dish Network, but he was his own boss, and he was in Hurley. No offense to anybody. And they literally went in as he was inside someone's home and broke into his car. That was paid by our insurance, but they broke and got his some of his impact drills and some other drill, and that was not covered.
Yeah, you can get
So I didn't know how his would work.
Yeah.
You know.
on a commercial policy, you can get blanket coverage or scheduled coverage for.
Well, what if he's actually in the home and takes something?
If they take.
Would that be totally different?
No.
Okay. I was just wondering, because
You
he
mean
has
like if-
equipment inside of someone's
Yeah.
home, or even hers, husband's.
No, it would be the same basically, as long as it's somewhere on the policy.
Okay, gotcha. Because they paid for the vehicle, you know, where it's broken, but they didn't pay for his actual equipment.
Right. But you can get a tools and equipment floater, say $10,000
Gotcha.
with a deductible and.
So, I was just curious. 'Cause
Yeah.
It happened, doesn't it? It sucked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, going back to you, David, you know, a lot of times small startup businesses, I mean, most time I recommend, when my son left here, I said, when you go out there, you know, you develop a relationship with your banker, if you're a stockbroker, a personal relationship with an insurance agent. This new Y generation is like, man, why do I need that? I just go online and get what's that, Geico or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and there's not that person. But I can tell you, for you especially, David, there is no way I would move a piece of dirt without having an attorney going through contracting stuff, because you're really, from everything I'm hearing, probably got more risk than anybody else. And tell them everything that you want to do, and let them do their contracts and so forth. You know, we were talking about waivers and all that. But again, the point is, you know, make sure, you know, you've got some outside experts, professionals, or what have you, you know, guiding you on certain areas, especially high-risk areas.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Alex, since he couldn't get on, but he said he could probably help if anybody has questions or anything, we could just email him, or he might could find some time to talk to you on the phone, and so we'll get you the help you need, but just want to share that. Anybody else got any questions? Sure, you've been doing, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, sure, you've been in this for a while, running a business. Any words of wisdom you might wanna share with some of these
Yes,
folks
please.
that?
It's tough. It's tough, you know, and mine is different, mine's food, it's fruit, produce, you know, I have a lot of loss. But, you know, it's the seasonal flowers that keeps you afloat. But no, like you said, you keep good books, keep your books good, and I did, Jordan, now we have liability insurance because we lease the place where we are, and we have liability insurance. I don't know, I did write down to check on my, vehicle, because, you know, it is my husband's personal truck that he, you know, uses for the business, but I guess it's just on our personal know, it's not,
I would just check with your agent or the company and
yeah.
let them know if it needs to be classed differently on that policy.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it can be. If not, then you may have to pull that vehicle off and do a separate policy.
Yeah, but,
But he doesn't do deliveries or anything. He just goes to pick up the product. Okay.
the product and bring it back. Well, now, he has started since right before Christmas, I guess it was, that he is now, but that's a separate, that's why I said, we were fortunate to pick up, when Brown's left out, so he is making deliveries. When he goes to get stuff for the store, he's delivering to 8 stores now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, you might want to check on that.
I may want to check on that, I did write that down, but, I mean, you know, it's fun, it is what you make of it, I guess, it's, you know, we enjoy it, but, it's tough, as Brian said, it's, just keep good records for tax purposes, yeah. And that gets a little, I'm that person that sticks it in a box, and I'm that person, I'm sorry, that I bought QuickBooks, but I don't use it, I do use a ledger. And I wait till the end of the year when I'm off for Christmas vacation to post everything. But I'm gonna do better this year,
I hear you.
that's what I say.
You know, the one thing I would add, you know, as far as, I mean, it sounds like you all got some wonderful ideas for businesses, and the one thing that you really want to make sure is that you have sufficient cash to start, because one of the biggest things that I see that causes failures is not having enough working capital to try. Now, if you're a service business, it's probably not as cash intensive required. You know what I'm saying? With you, with inventory, you know, you've got a certain level. David, yours is be even more, because you're talking about your fixed assets and so forth. But you want to make sure because initially when you start out, I mean, businesses take time to grow, so you've got that growing curve. And you want to make sure you have the cash that carries you through those lean times, you know?
I agree, there, many months, we said, do we need to stay here? And I guess if we hadn't, you know, I work and had some coming in, it's tough. You can, I can see how businesses can close and,
Banks
you
are
know.
tight, they don't give you money.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in business for 11 years, and just until a year or two ago, would a bank even entertain any idea that I had about loaning me money or whatever, no matter what. I mean, it's just risk and reward, and they want to know your life history, and everybody that knows your life history, and it's a big deal.
Well, that's the discussion next week, we'll have some lenders here, but, from a bank, I mean, I guess the banking crisis has really changed things, and that's why it's important that you have that you can run those reports, because they're going to want to know, they want to make sure, you know, cash flow is another thing that's very, very important to you, is managing that, because before the session started, Mary and I were talking about, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of small businesses that will not recover from this, just simply because they were already just barely getting by and had nothing to make those payments. Although, I have to say that a lot of banking, lending institutions is coming up and deferring payments and your utilities and so forth, but that won't always be the case. Hopefully, they won't be the circumstances we're under now. But that's important, and we want to look at that. I know for us, we don't want to make a loan to somebody thinking that there's no way they're going to be able to service that debt. That's not what we do.
Yeah, you
and that's
can't
not going
do
to help
that.
you. If we say, you know, you're not in a position to do that, you might want to scale back your project to where you can. And of course, we always want to look for a secondary income source in case these hard times. And it seems like all this stuff I've been preaching is starting to come to fruition to a lot of businesses. But banking industry has changed a lot, and they do want to know everything. If you're in a partnership, you know, if there's anyone that has over 20% investment in the company, you're going to have to provide financials if you are going to after a loan, because you're part of that business. You got to stand good for it. So.
And you have to, I think, you know, well, as we're all in here, I'm not saying old, but have some wisdom with us, I guess, and, mom and dad had taught, your business is gonna be seasonal. Like mine, I have produce all year, but, you know, after Christmas, January, February is, you just about to close the door, and I can see how a lot of fruit markets do. You know, I'm gonna make it, you're gonna make it in the summer, I'm gonna make it with flowers, and I'm gonna make it at Christmas, and you gotta learn to hold on when it's good, because you're gonna have some slow times, and you will learn that, you know, you've got to kind of hold on to it, because you may have some slump areas.
Yeah, and a lot of times what I see, especially with startups, is they get into that, cash crunch, and it's easy to panic, and then all of a sudden they're taking shortcuts. Well, I'm not going, you know, I'm not going to pay this now, or, well, I'm just going to start selling off my inventory, and then you've totally got out of your business model. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that working capital is very important, to keep you from doing those things.
Don't go on vacations.
Yeah, once
Go to
y'all
Vegas,
own your own business, yeah.
Bahamas.
Don't take my July money.
I thought, I was like,
and
man, I got a
spend it
little bit of
all.
money, let's do something here.
Yeah,
No, that was a bad mistake.
yeah, don't take your summer money or, but, you know, it's what you make it, your business is what you make it, and if you have the love for it and that's what you wanna do, then you will enjoy it and make a go of it. We need businesses in Buchanan County, we all need to help our county grow, and,
But you have to look at it from a long-term approach. In other words, David, I mean, again, going back to your business, that's something that could grow, but it's not gonna, everybody show up at your door the next day, and you've got to give it that time, and it will.
you gotta build your customer base.
Yeah.
Natasha, are you doing your work out of your home?
Currently, yes.
Okay. The reason I ask is I would check with your home insurance company and just make sure that you can put some kind of business pursuit coverage on there, most you can.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing it at your home and, you know, you're delivering the stuff, it's a little bit different than if you've got customers coming to your house.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of foot traffic, so that's just something to keep in mind if, you know, as long as you're at the home.
I know, like with that too, like my equipment and everything has to have its own type of insurance policy, because, you know, what if there's a fire? Well, yeah, it is personal property, but, you know, it's really, really not
Right.
personal either,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
It classifies as something totally different.
What about percentages, Bob? Tell me a little bit about percentages as far as what you make, how much of that percentages go toward taxes right off the top before you even, you know what I mean? And what can and can't be wrote off as, you know, like a tax write-off.
Well, you know, going back to you, for example, I said, were you the one that had your husband has a job and then you're adding this and you asked the question? Okay, so, typically, using yours as an example, let's say that you're gonna make, a net profit of $30,000, we'll say. If, as a sole member LLC and you're paying your own self-employed, see with Social Security, if you're working for someone, then they're paying half the Social Security and you're paying half. When you're doing your own business, you pay both, and it's 15.3%, okay? So off that 30,000, for example, right out of the gate, that's $4,500. Then you've got income taxes. Once it hits your return, with your husband's, you got federal and state income taxes. And again, it depends on the level of income. You know, if it's taxable, if you're, say, right at the cutoff is like 78,000, it goes from a 12% rate to a 22% rate. That's the marginal change. But in a nutshell, you're looking at, 30 plus, percent that you need to set aside for taxes. That's the other thing that can really throw a snag yes, is not, covering your taxes. Again, it's easy you try to prioritize, well, I've gotta pay this guy, he's gonna turn my electric bill off, and then you put, the tax man down at the end. That is a bad mistake, to do that. That should be the first one. You make
pay
sure
what they
those
take
pay.
it.
Yeah,
Whatever you wanna do. They
Yeah.
take the last cent too, they don't.
yeah. And the same thing with state taxes, for example, again, Rosie, not to pick on you, but
Killing me, Bob.
you're killing me. Yeah. For example, if you are, you're not going, are you gonna be leasing ATVs? You're not gonna be leasing them.
No, we're just repairing them.
But you're gonna
ATVs.
repair, okay?
Yeah.
You need to check, because you're probably gonna have, if you're buying parts and
We
putting
are.
on them,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to charge sales tax
Yeah.
on the parts, maybe not the labor, okay? Now, let's say you collect $1,200 this month in sales tax, okay? It's sitting there. Again, going back to my initial, example, you get in a cash crunch, so all of a sudden, you're putting, well, I ain't worried, I won't put that over here. Here's the problem, you're a trustee, okay? This is different than you owe a little bit of income tax because you claimed your dog on your return, you know what I'm saying? You're a trustee, and that is real serious, because that's not your money. You're handling that from your customers. You see what I'm saying? So really, that should be the first tax you pay. You see what I'm saying? So, do what?
Every month, sales.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tomorrow it's due.
Yeah,
Payroll tax is big.
and payroll taxes, you're a trustee.
On the QuickBooks, the other thing, if you go back to that, we created another account just for that tax. And QuickBooks will keep up with where you are, what you owe in each tax, the day that it's due.
Mhm.
You file it straight through QuickBooks, and Jess takes that account and she makes sure that there's money in that account just for that reason. She don't put that anywhere near our company account, our personal account, nothing. That's not your money. Straight out of as soon as it comes in, she puts it there.
And you pay it every month?
Every month,
Okay.
and QuickBooks will tell you, it'll give you, it'll itemize it off for you. And she makes sure that money's allotted for that tax.
Okay.
And then the rest of the money, the rest of the income, that's what you got to work with to pay the rest of your bills and whatnot.
Good deal.
Yeah, I have to pay sales tax every month on the
And,
25th.
and again, this is not to sound, oh gosh, I haven't thought,
Yes,
I've
it
read this. I mean, if you got a good business idea, and you got a good business plan, and you got a growth strategy, it'll all work. All we're saying is make sure you take care of these taxes, because that can bury you if you don't.
And quickly, they can accumulate. Credit card's another thing that people put off, and they keep charging more, and that means your rate keeps going up and
Yeah.
up, and I've seen that
That,
be a trouble thing right there.
very good point. I highly, I deter, credit card usage, especially for working capital. It's the worst thing in the world you could do. That's too an expensive cost, for working capital. Sometimes, generally, you want to be in a position, credit cards is absolutely necessary. I use credit card a lot, but you really want to be able to pay it off at the end of the month. Because what'll happen, again, you start prioritizing your vendors. Guess what gets at the bottom? Well, I just gotta pay $16 minimum, we'll just ride that. And then before you know it, I mean, literally, I've known people to cash in some of their, a bulk of their pension plans to pay $40,000 of credit card debt. Because they just let it keep sliding.
End up paying interest.
Yeah, the interest rates is ridiculous.
Credit cards are a crutch that gets people in trouble.
If they're not, if you manage them right, credit cards are fine. But when I say manage them right, that means paying them off within 30 to 60 days, and using them, like a revolving credit line, really. When you get one and you're using, what you end up doing, all of a sudden, credit cards should be short-term money, okay? But you ended up using it for short-term needs, but make it long-term, and that never works out.
everybody learn something? Or did you get scared? We'll blame that on Bob.
No fear. The Lord has not given us a spirit of fear, but one of power and love and a sound mind. I think you've got great ideas, and like I said, you've got a good plan going in, and you just let it grow steadily. You know, steady growth's the key.
Well, I appreciate both of you all participating. This means a lot, and I hope you all found real value. And I'm sure your door is not closed after tonight. If anybody has any additional questions, I'm sure both of you all be happy to answer. I'm volunteering you, but,
Just call me after April 15th.
yeah.
No, y'all call me.
Next,
Call Ryan too. Next year, Ryan needs to be.
okay, we'll see you all next week. Be safe, stay healthy, and
Wash
thanks
your
for
hands.
coming. Yes.
Cover your cough.